And on the GDP statement today, over the 2.4% growth of the GDP, the president said that he's touting real wages are higher than pre-pandemic. Real wages are up 0.4% in the last 30 months, and that's less than 1% increase over the past 2.5 years. It doesn't really help folks buy food. So what do you say to those people who are seeing their wages not pay for as much food as much?
What the hell?
Just to be very clear, we are accounting for inflation when we say wages are at 1.2% higher, and then they were last year, which was at 0.7% higher than before the pandemic. So that is indeed something that we're accounting for. And so, there's a strong job market that exists. The inflation, as you know, has been easing for 12 months straight in a row, 12 months in a row. And so wages are rising, and there's even more low and middle wage workers, which is also important as we look at the data, as we look at the direction this economy is going. And that's helping us catch up from decades of widening wages that we have seen.
Oh my God.
Thank you, Corinne. There are new reports about back-channel talks, negotiations between the U.S. and Russia, supposedly conducted by former U.S. officials. Are you aware of any such regular contacts, and is there any involvement on the U.S. government's part in those negotiations?
I'm not going to get into reporting on conversations outside of the government. And I'm certainly not going to get into diplomatic conversations that we may be having with Russia. That's not something that I'm going to do from here.
Hey, great. The tax matter that had Hunter Biden in court in Wilmington yesterday, it had criminal information saying that he hadn't paid 1.2 to about 1.5 million in taxes owed. So my question is, number one, I know the president doesn't talk to him, you said, about his business, but was he aware at the time that he wasn't filing his returns in a timely fashion? And also, did he ever advise him to pay? Because Hunter testified in court that 1 year he was sober when he didn't file. So did they ever discuss the tax situation?
I'm not going to get into the specific of the case.
Does he think it might have to beef up his
I've answered this question over and over again. Nothing has changed from the statement that I made yesterday. Nothing's going to change from the few times that I've gotten this question in the briefing room. We're not going to comment on this. This is an independent investigation that is being led by a Trump-appointed prosecutor, that is being led by clearly the Department of Justice, right? The prosecutors I just mentioned, and we're just not going to comment on this.
You mentioned DOJ. Does he have any concerns that the deal prosecutors put together fell apart and couldn't make it by a judge?
We're not going to comment on specifics of the case.
Oh, you crazy.
Go ahead, John.
Thank you, Corinne. Just want to ask you if you could to preview tomorrow's trip to Maine, what's going to be accomplished, or what you hope will be accomplished, and also why was Maine chosen for this event?
So he's going to visit a manufacturing facility, which I think is important, right? As we're talking about bringing manufacturing back to the country and creating jobs, good paying jobs. And so he'll discuss how Bidenomics is revitalizing the American manufacturing and bringing investments, like I said, and jobs back to communities. Big investments that many communities have never seen before, as it relates to jobs and as it relates to making sure that we're making things in America again. And so he will announce new actions promoting domestic manufacturing of new technologies in America. And as you know, we've announced more than $1.5 billion in investments in Maine infrastructure, including $570 million for funding for high-speed internet. And so public investment from this president's legislative accomplishments are helping to revitalize local legacy industries like textile. So that's what he's going to be doing tomorrow. It is going to be his first time in Maine. Like the president said, he's a president for everyone. And so we're excited to go there. He's excited to be there to make this announcement, and critical, important announcement to not just the constituents of Maine, the American people of Maine, but also to the country.
Separately, you suggested reaching out to the Italian embassy as it relates to why there is no press conference today, no joint press conference.
No, that's not what I said. Why they are proceeding to move in the direction that they are moving.
I did. I reached out to them during the briefing.
Great.
And what they said was we didn't insist, knowing that you would not accept. Is that accurate? What you
I have
say?
no idea. I mean, you're asking me to comment on something that they said. I haven't even spoken to the team yet, so I can't comment on what you're reporting right now. I have to talk to the team. What I can say, it's not a unilateral decision. It's a conversation that happens with the visiting country. Don't have anything more to share on that. As they are proceeding with the way that they want to communicate, that's on them to speak to. That's not on us to speak to.
Is there any reason, just to tie this up,
Yeah,
is there any
sure.
reason why it would be rejected? That idea of a joint press conference would be rejected?
Like I said, it is a unilateral, it's not a unilateral decision. It is a conversation that we have with the other country. So I can't speak to specifics on that. Go ahead, Brian.
Thanks, Corinne. 2.5 questions, and thanks to all the colleagues and all the members of the staff that are leaving. I want to get all that in. As for climate change, I just want to drill down a bit on that. In Lithuania, the president said that it is the greatest existential threat that we face, and the window is closing. Since then, there's been no meaningful legislation introduced in Congress. During the congressional break, will the president be working with his allies in Congress to up the legislation to address climate change?
Inflation Reduction Act. That was
Other than that, yes.
I mean, but we can't poo-poo that. That was an incredibly important piece of legislation that we are currently implementing. Look, the Inflation Reduction Act is going to make a real significant investment as we're talking about climate change. We have never seen that type of piece of legislation before under any administration. So that is important. That is critical. Of course, the president is always going to take steps to move forward as he sees the climate crisis, the climate change as a crisis, as he said from the beginning of this administration. And so, of course, we're always going to look on ways, but he has had the most ambitious policy, not just legislation, but also policies as well.
Okay. Well, I just wondered if he was working on additional legislation, but
We're always looking on ways, and we've already have had ambitious policies to
On the
deal with climate change crisis.
second one, and I
Yeah.
just want to drill down a little bit on the Hunter Biden thing. And I think this will cut to, I'm not going to ask you to speak to anything other than this administration. Can you state categorically that the administration has neither sought nor received favorable treatment from the DOJ for any investigation into the president, members of the administration, his family, or former President Donald Trump?
Absolutely not. The Department of Justice is independent. The president respects the rule of law. He has been saying that since he was before president, and that will remain the case.
And then finally, just as far as the questions about the president's health, I think that would be all cleared up if, once again, if we could just ask him to step out of that door into this room for 45 minutes. And so I ask you again to pass that along to him, to ask him to come out and see us.
I appreciate the request. Thank you for the request. The president, as you know, again, I appreciate the question, and I get it, and the president understands. You guys want to ask him questions and have the opportunity for him to answer your questions. I do want to say, this is a president that has done more in the first 2.5 years, when it comes to the economy, when it comes to really giving the American people a little bit of breathing room than any other president. All you got to do is look at the data. All you got to do is look at where we are in this country. There was a conversation for almost 2 years about a recession, and now you have economists saying that because of the work that this president has done these past 2 years, we're not headed in that way. And so, this is a president that wakes up every morning thinking about the American people and doing that job and doing the work, and you see that. You see that, again, in historic pieces of legislation, whether it's the bipartisan infrastructure legislation. That was a joke. Infrastructure Week was a joke. And now we're talking about infrastructure decade. CHIPS and Science Act, we're able to do that in a bipartisan way. You're going to see the president in Maine tomorrow talking about how to bring jobs back to this country, how to bring manufacturing back to this country. things that the last administration was trying to do, and it was a joke. And this president is actually making it happen. So I'm going to just keep talking about that, keep laying that out.
I'd like to see him talk about
I
that.
get
That's what I'm
that, but
saying.
you'll hear him talk about that tomorrow.